The DIMP Digital Network presents the DDT WrestleCast.
Hello, Apps here from the DIMP Digital Network. Welcome to the DDT WrestleCast. I'm once again joined by Paper, and we are going to go through and review WWE WrestleMania 36, which took place not just over one night, but two nights, because apparently during the COVID-19 lockdown, WrestleMania somehow expands its scope. Now, if you're listening on our dedicated DDT WrestleCast feed, then well done. You are one of the first in the world to be listening to this, so, pat yourself on the back for that. If you're on the DIMP Digital Network or our YouTube channel, thank you. But if you do like or love pro wrestling, you really owe it yourself to subscribe to the dedicated feed. Not only will you get the episodes at least 48 hours early, at least, you will also be treated to some bonus content that is exclusive to that feed. So just search for DDT WrestleCast and you'll find us there and get everything a little bit earlier, plus a few extras. Paper, we're doing WrestleMania 36, but before we get into that, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I didn't even realise we've got content 48 hours in advance. I'm subscribing, and I suggest you all do that as well.
Yeah, got to be something for them.
Exactly. I wasn't even following on the dedicated channels. That's a slap on the wrist for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to go, unfortunately. Now, I've got to say that I wasn't expecting to be doing this, because I was going to watch WrestleMania 36 because not a lot else to do. You have got a network subscription for a trial period of about 3 months, so you've been using that to watch some of the classic events that we're going to be reviewing and other bits and pieces. But I really did not expect you to be watching WrestleMania 36. Is it just that you was at a loose end and you thought, I might as well watch it? Was it for the good of the podcast, or was you genuinely interested to see what WWE are up to these days?
Well, I guess there's a bit of everything there. We're all locked up at the moment, so we've got a bit of spare time on our hands, a lot more than we're used to. And so it's given me an opportunity to watch something, I guess. Not only that, I've not watched a WWE/WWF live event or something around that's happening at the time, probably now for a good several years. So there was a part of me that really thought, you know what, if I'm going to watch something, it was always going to be either WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble events, and it just happened to here and at the moment that they're giving away a 3-month free subscription on the WWE Network. So I jumped on that bandwagon. And I thought, you know what, we'll watch some classics. And then, this came along. And I thought, let's give it a shot. Let's see what it's like. And that's led us down this path where I'm now sat on this podcast, giving my humble opinion about something that I don't really watch that very often, in terms of the WWE. So people, if they scream and shout, bear with me. But we will get there.
Well, the thing is, people that they can scream and shout all they want, but ultimately, one thing that every business wants to do, WWE not excluded, is to grow. And in order to grow, they need to get the attention of people like you who don't invest in their product today and keep you. So, at some point, people who haven't watched WWE for a long time or haven't watched it at all are going to take the plunge. And they always bill WrestleMania as the biggest event of the year. Granted, it's in some really unique circumstances behind closed doors, and that's something that everyone's having to deal with, all sorts of businesses. We've got Dana White promising to have his own private island to run UFC events out of, and it's just like, what is going on in this world? So it's a bit of a shame that it's happened at this time where all the production values are completely changed. But I would recommend you going back and watching the Royal Rumble if you get a loose end from this year and just seeing what a live event is like. That'll probably give you a bit more of a an accurate perception of what generally happens. But we are where we are with wrestling, and they are running events, albeit with no crowd, and just empty arenas and possibly a few wrestlers scattered around in the crowd. High level thoughts, because we've been watching AEW. It'll be the fourth week that AEW has run closed kind of events in empty arenas. How did you think the production looked on the WWE front in comparison to AEW? I know you have watched Raw from after WrestleMania, so you've got to look at what a normal event looked like, and as you can see, it's the same set. It's just they've changed the signs and whatnot. But what did you think in terms of comparing what AEW have been doing compared to what you saw with WWE, and probably you've watched just about as much time, because I think this was 6.5 hours overall, and over the last 3 weeks it won't be far off from that.
No, in comparison, they're both sort of doing very much a similar type of thing. AEW's ones, they had clearly some arenas booked previously that they just used, so they were just in empty arenas. I think in the last AEW event that I watched, they were suddenly now in like more of like what I call like that warehouse type jobby, which the WWE is hosting their stuff from at the moment, their sort of training centre. I quite like it in the warehouse, if I'm being honest. If you're not going to have the crowd there, don't do it in a stadium. Do it in a warehouse, and just make the most of it. There are little bits that I liked. I think I felt like the AEW still seemed to have more stuff around pyro and stuff like that in comparison to in comparison to WWE. However, I like the fact that WWE clearly had little things like the announce table was right there, whereas that seems to have disappeared in AEW, and it feels like they're just commentating off screen now. So they're little things, but primarily they've both got the same thing to work with. AEW have gone for trying to have wrestlers in the crowd for a few events. WWE have stayed clear of that. I quite like the wrestlers in the crowd as long as they're good, and I think that it proves the time when AEW had MJF in the crowd, that was really fun. I really liked that. But last week when they did it, they had Jimmy Havoc, Kip, and all like that lot, and they probably weren't as good at selling that from the audience perspective. But I you know what, I understand the situation we're all in at the moment, and so I won't hold that against anyone at the moment.
One thing I noticed is that it seems like there's a completely different style in that AEW appear to go for a very dark. The lighting is very dark, so you can't really see past sort of where the front row is and where the wrestlers are. Whereas the WWE the whole arena is kind of lit up, it's bright, and you can see the emptiness, I guess. Is there a right or wrong way to do that, or is it different strokes for different folks?
I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think it's just maybe that's a bit more on brand. I see WWE as a bit more of a colourful place, something
cleaner, isn't it?
For a younger audience, and therefore brighter aesthetics, sell. Whereas AEW is clearly at a little bit of an older audience, where the dark, the dingy grittiness is probably a bit more their USP. So I just think it's just more what they're doing on their own brand.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think personally, for an empty arena, the less of the emptiness you can see, the better. But the Performance Center does look okay, like it's not horrible to look at, so nothing to worry about. Now, this wouldn't have been a 2-night extravaganza if COVID-19 hadn't struck and locked everything down. It was scheduled to be a 1 night. And obviously, for obvious reasons, that couldn't happen. How did you find about having the 2-night sessions? As I said, it clocked in at just about 3.5 hours on the second night and 3 hours on the first night. That would 6.5 hours. A usual WrestleMania can run over 5 sometimes in one night. So so in some ways, maybe I'm answering your question for you. It's almost a bit of a saving grace. It was over 2 nights, because that's a long time to sit there and watch one program.
Yeah, it was too much. Like in terms of time, that I want to spend watching something. I feel like there, and we'll probably come more into the matches later on, but there were definitely matches that probably just didn't need to be WrestleMania matches. I definitely feel there's something to be clocking on here too, and it might be, you know, like you could have your WrestleMania, your main card type thing, you know, where you do your 3.5, maybe spanning onto 4 hours if you really need to go that much. And you could probably have and do that on the Sunday or whatever day you want to do on the Saturday. You could have like a pre-show where like some sort of more darker matches are. I personally, I just thought it was just too much, and it sort of took away from, you know, this one big thing, and it sort of felt, it's over 2 nights, you know, it's not as big and grand as it should be. So I definitely felt like, to be honest, I've got a gripe with most of the pay-per-views being a little bit too long anyway. My attention span is around the 3 hour mark, 3.5 hours anyway. So but yeah, just 2 nights was just too much. I felt like and we take this from a UK audience perspective, whereas we probably don't get to watch it live. Whereas, you know, if you're listening watching in the US and you're listening to this, you'll be watching it like somewhere between sort of 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. or something like that.
Yeah, depending
or whatever,
on
what side of the country you are over there. And that's therefore a lot more reasonable. You can have a can of beer and you can just watch it. And I get it from that perspective. But from like a UK perspective, you're suddenly playing, either you stay up through the night, and 2 nights, that's too much, or you have to get up the next morning and just, you know, you're playing catch up both days, and it sort of just takes away from having a life a bit. Like, especially if you're watching SmackDown on the Friday, then you have WrestleMania on Saturday, and then you have WrestleMania on Sunday, and then you have Raw on Monday. That's 4 nights, so that's 6.5 hours for the WrestleMania, and you've got 2 hours for each of those Raw and SmackDown shows.
Raw's 3 hours.
Well, there you go. That's 9.5, and then there's 2 hours for SmackDown. So that's 11.5 hours of wrestling in a 4-day window. That is, that's a lot of wrestling to get through. And kudos to people that do it. But to me, it's just too much. And the thing is, when you're watching WrestleMania as well, like there's NXT people popping up as well, and so you need to know what's going on over that part of the branch, and you know that's probably another couple of hours of your week, and suddenly you're looking at a week's worth of wrestling. You're looking at like 13, 14, 15 hours of wrestling. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot, and I don't know how people can keep up with it all the time, but they do. And to be honest, WrestleMania is always like a special weekend for wrestling, so I don't mind it too much, but it's not too different from when there's just a normal pay-per-view, because they run a pay-per-view on a Sunday and it's still pushing 4 hours sometimes, so you've still got Friday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then you're back into it again. So it's not it's not an easy product to follow, which I think is why I don't watch it as closely as I do with something like AEW, which is give or take 2 hours done, plus a dark if I want to watch it, and then the other little supplementary YouTube stuff. But we digress. We're here to talk about WrestleMania. One thing that annoyed me off the bat with WrestleMania was, I think on the Friday, I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll send a poll out on our Twitter, which is at DDT WrestleCast, and I thought I'll send a poll out and say which matches are people most looking forward to on Saturday, and then do one for Saturday for Sunday. And I looked Friday night in the UK, probably about 7-8 o'clock, and I was like, can't seem to find anything. They didn't even announce what was on each night until like 12 hours before the event.
Really?
Yeah, it might have even been less time than that. I think I remember checking later on Saturday, and I still had no idea what was on night 1 and no idea what was on night 2. And I was like, I know what the matches are, but I don't know what day they're going on. So that had to be binned. And I was like, well, that's surely... And the thing is, this whole event was recorded and taped probably about a week ago. So it's not like they had to, change anything on the fly. It was already being pre-produced. This whole thing was a taped show, as most of the wrestling will be now, because live's just too much of a risk, because you might get shut down the night of, and they just couldn't even organise that properly. But there you go, that's how it goes. What we're going to do, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, is we will run through the matches really light touch, because there's nearly 16 overall. I want to separate the two, let's say, unique matches and just put them at the very end for their own discussion, because that's certainly, I think, one of the most interesting things of the weekend that's come out of this, is the sort of two cinematic matches, if you want to call them that. But in the meantime, we can run through the matches very, very light touch and just get any thoughts or opinions we have on it. And, we might get halfway through and think, actually, this is even getting too long to review on a podcast, which will give you an indication of how we're feeling with it. But we kicked things off on night one, women's tag team match. It was a 15-minute opener, and I just thought, well, if you're going to have a women's tag team match, 15 minutes seems a bit long, especially later on when you've got your actual singles title on the line. That ends in 9 minutes. That didn't make sense to me. But any thoughts on the women's side of things in general? Because one of the criticisms we constantly level at AEW is their women's division. In general, including this match, what did you think of the women's division that WWE had to offer?
Generally, in comparison to the AEW division, they're a billion times better.
Different league, isn't it?
It's completely like they're not just athletic; they sell it a lot more, and it's a lot more. They're holding their own more with the men than the other the AEW women are at the moment. And like, you know what? And I guess leading into that first match, I was apprehensive, maybe because I'd watched so much AEW before, and then going into this, and then, but yeah, I to be honest, I quite enjoyed the match. I generally, 50, it was a little bit long, and it probably didn't need to be so long. But in terms of kicking the show, because I was also in my head, I was thinking, well, are they trying to kick the show off on a weak one? And usually you want to maybe start off with a bit of a bang or something like that. But I just thought it was just quite a nice, solid fight, to be honest, match. And so generally, like the women performed really well. I guess we had a not a hometown girl, a British girl in there as well, which was always quite nice from our perspective to see that. I was pleasantly surprised.
There you go. We then moved on to King Corbin v Elias. A shorter match, 9 minutes. Any particular thoughts on this one? I mean, it's tricky especially when you've not been watching any of it, to really grasp what's going on. But even if you do watch it regularly, it's still difficult. Yeah. So it doesn't seem to matter either way. But any thoughts on Elias versus King Corbin? A lot of people don't like King Corbin because they say he's a bit of just a useless heel. But the fact that people don't like him, I think, means he's doing his job effectively.
Exactly, he's definitely doing his job. If people don't like you, you're doing your job as a heel. You know what? And I think this is going to be a reoccurring thing throughout this. I personally preferred the non-title fights in the whole of WrestleMania, and this one maybe wasn't probably the best one to allude to, but like the WWE did give you a bit of a backstory before like every fight, like they usually do, and see what it says what happened, so you get a little bit knowing what's happened. But it just feels like because there's no title on the line, they're sort of let loose a little bit more, and it feels like they can just do some things that are a bit more comedic and a bit more like smashing a guitar over your head and stuff like that. Because like I guess with the belt matches, they're a lot of the time they're looking for having an all out a proper wrestling match and so forth, because the belt's on line, and so you want to protect the integrity of the belt, I guess. To a certain extent. But these ones, they just let them loose, and it was just quite nice. And I it's once again just another enjoyable match. 10 minutes or 9 minutes, not too long. It was. I feel like I could get behind the Honky Tonk Man or whatever he was called. Without going too much detail and stuff like that, like it was an enjoyable match.
I don't like Elias. I don't know why. I can't.
Why? What's wrong?
I don't know. It's just his face and his beard and his hair. Like I don't know. It's just, so some people just look at it and think, it doesn't matter what you do, I'm never going to be on your side, unfortunately. And it's not a good place to be when you've got King Corbin or Elias, both who are just equally as hateable. And I thought, well, I've mentally checked out this one. We then got on to Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler. Now, Shayna Baszler obviously was a former mixed martial artist and has been in NXT for the past few years, ripping it up over there. Becky Lynch is kind of like their big woman's star at the moment. What I took from this is Becky Lynch retained in 9 minutes. She kind of got caught in Shayna Baszler's Karafuda clutch and then reversed it and pinned her while she was still holding on to it. So it wasn't like a clean, decisive finish. It was more of like a bit of a lucky one or an outwitting. So that suggests to me this is the first part of a series of matches they'll end up having later on this year. But first sort of women's singles match on the event. What did you think of the Raw Women's title match between Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler?
Well, yeah, they did hype this one up a fair whack before the fight. I thought, it's probably one of the better women's fights on the whole card, and I don't know too much about Shayna Baszler before, but obviously Becky Lynch does feel like their poster girl for the women's division. And I to be honest, in my head, Becky Lynch had won it at the previous WrestleMania against Ronda Rousey, and I thought, well, she's probably going to drop it here. So to be honest, I was quite pleasantly surprised, and I wasn't expecting that result. And I think you're right; they set it up so it's not quite over. And I think even in Raw on the Monday after, I was just quickly catching up on that to see what was going on. But they haven't ended that feud, and so it does look like it's going to carry on moving forward. I was pretty impressed by Shayna Baszler. Shayna, I can't pronounce it. But yeah, I was pretty impressed. She looks brutal, as if she would hurt someone, and with her character, and I feel like she's portraying that really well, and it's coming across really well. And even in losing, she comes across as shit, fuck you. You're lucky to get out of that one, Becky. And so yeah, it was as I feel like it went really well, really enjoyable. The way it finished was quite a nice way for it to finish as well. So yeah, good. I've got no problems so far. I've got no problems.
This is far more positive than I expected. The only thing I'd say about that match was Becky Lynch has had the belt for a year now, and she's pretty much killed off every other heel opponent she's come across. Had no problems and breezed past them. I kind of think just having her drop the belt to Baszler and having her chase again would have been a really good way to establish Baszler as an actual threat. But it's curious now how they'll go forward and make Baszler seem like a legitimate threat again after she's been outsmarted once. If you want to do that chase, and maybe it's going to be a shorter feud than we think, and it won't go as far as a few more months. But I thought it'd be good to get her to choke her out cold. Don't have Becky Lynch tap out. Have her go out cold, take the belt, and then there's a chase for Lynch. There's actual something to overcome. Good v evil and all that good stuff. But they've kept the title on Lynch. I can't imagine she won't drop it to Baszler at some point, but it'd just be interesting to see as and when they do that. So
I don't know. My theory around it is and I don't know what's going on with Paige. But there's been things coming out teasing that she might not be a million miles away from coming back to the ring after recent surgeries, and so Becky Lynch
had Edge come back, so
yeah, exactly. So Becky Lynch versus Paige for the title would be one of their biggest matches that they could put on. And there's a load of I'm not going to go pretend to know the history of Paige and Becky Lynch, but I know they were a partnership or a trio, and them two and someone else for a long time, and then obviously Paige turned heel and stuff like that. So there's if Paige isn't a million miles away from coming back, there's one hell of a storyline there for the WWE.
Yep. Sami Zayn versus Daniel Bryan for the formerly coveted Intercontinental title match, which we saw headline SummerSlam 92, is now relegated to fourth on the match runnings of WrestleMania. Sami Zayn wins in 10 minutes. Basically, Daniel Bryan acts like a geek, gets distracted, jumps off the top rope and gets caught with a hell of a kick, as it's called, and is pinned. How's this compared to the Bulldog versus Bret Hart match that we watched a few days ago?
It's just shit. To be fair, this was probably the worst match on the whole.
And Daniel
card.
Bryan, I've seen him in some really good matches.
Yeah, it's just I'm all up for a bit of comedy and a bit but it just went on a bit too much, and you would be if stuff like that was consistently happening, you'd expect the referee to say, "Oi, get out of the way," and stuff like that. But it was just the integrity of that Intercontinental belt, it's all just gone tits up from 1992. There is no prestige there. It's just lucking it. They may as well just rename it the 24/7 belt for all I care. It's just it was so poorly done and not enjoyable. And then, like, even when Daniel Bryan came in, we didn't mention this, but like that Gronk person, he needs putting down as well. Like
Gronkowski, three-time Super Bowl winner.
I don't care. He seems like a kids' TV show post. And so they were cheering when he came in, and suddenly that just put me straight off Daniel Bryan. And then, and then Zayn came in, and like you automatically dislike him already because he
ran away for about 6 minutes.
And that just went on too long. Like you get it once as you know, as a ploy and stuff like that, but like it just kept happening. He's like, right, get on with this now. It just I wasn't sold by that at all. It was just a bit poor. It's just a bit pants.
Yeah, I agree. We then have the SmackDown Tag Team Title match, which is a ladder match between, and I'm not getting this wrong when I explain this, between John Morrison, Kofi Kingston, and Jimmy Uso. Mm-hmm. So it's not a tag match, and yet the tag titles are on the line. Now, I know there's been an issue with The Miz, who's John Morrison's partner. I think he started getting ill and showing symptoms that you would lock yourself down with. Not necessarily saying that he's caught coronavirus or COVID-19, but he was starting to feel unwell. And at this stage, you can't be taking any risks. And at that stage, surely you just go, right, we're not going to have the titles on the line. It's just going to be a triple threat ladder match and be a spot fest, which is what it was. And I can't defend the fact that the tag titles are on the line here to start with it. But parking that illogical piece of shit aside, Morrison retains it in 19 minutes in a ladder match, which, as I said, I thought was a reasonably good match. It was a bit of a spot fest, but that's what you expect out of a stunt ladder match. And these three have got the athleticism to carry that off.
Yeah. To be honest, take the titles away from it, like the prestige of the title and stuff like that. For me personally, best match of night one. I really, really enjoyed it. I like when they started coming out, like, because I hadn't looked at too much of the details around what was going on. I was trying to figure out, like, when John Morrison came out, and then I think Kofi Kingston came out after him. My initial assumption was like, they must be tagging up, but they come out to their individual tunes. Because that's what happens usually when they just put two people together. They come out to their own tune. And it wasn't. I just couldn't fit, and it took me a while to figure out. And then I was like, I get this now. All right, sure. Yeah. And that was a bit weird. But then, as I said, park that thought, and then I just enjoyed the match. And it was a massive spot fest, and but all the high flying moves that flying off ladders, people falling out of the ring, slams onto ladders, running. I think John Morrison ran along the rope at one point.
That was just super impressive when he roped the whole top rope. I was like, good God.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, and there was lots of little things like that just were just like it was great. And like, I think with these spot fest, they can do it because they allow other people to have a rest while one's down outside the ring and so forth. Yeah. And for me, I really enjoyed the ending, the way that the match came to an end, where they were all up there and John Morrison falls from the top,
lands on a ladder, and I think he was meant to continue holding one of the belts, but they all both fall out of his hands, and he rolls off that ladder quickly and falls on top of one. I thought it was a great way to end it. I felt like they probably were going to retain it. I don't think they've been title holders that long. Kofi Kingston, like, I didn't even realise was, like, as I said, I've not been watching WWE for ages, but he's been around for, it seems like, forever now. And he's the athleticism of him as well. It's unbelievable. I really, really enjoyed it. It kept me entertained for the 19 minutes. And I think I was like on the computer because I was watching the day after, and when something did, I got sidetracked for like 2 minutes, and then something happened. I was like, oh shit, and then I had to rewind it 2 minutes. Whereas most other matches, if that happens, I'd just be like, oh God, whatever. Just let it go.
I've missed that.
Yeah.
So
it was a good match. I enjoyed it, and these three can put on a great match, especially with ladders involved. You can just sort of just sit back and enjoy it. One spot I did think was really obviously edited was there's a part where Jimmy Uso, I think he got knocked off the top turnbuckle and just fell onto the outside, and it looked like a flat back bump, but the camera didn't pan down like it naturally would. So at that point, I'm 99% sure they had a crash mat there. He landed on that, and they cut and re-put it together. But that's the only real sort of minor gripe of it, is that was a little bit too obvious. And the finish was creative. If not, it made Uso and Kingston look a bit foolish. But Morrison's bump at the end, I was like, good lord, that is a real sickener. We'll then move on to Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens. Now, this match is a 17-minute match, kind of in two parts, because at about the halfway mark, Rollins decided to hit Owens with the bell and cause disqualification. Kevin Owens then taunted him, saying, look, if you can't come and finish the job, if you're a real man, all this sort of stuff. And Rollins comes back and then ends up losing. But what did you make of this match? I didn't really care for the sort of mid-match interruption part. It just make it a no DQ match to start with. The feud had enough to go in it. But what do you make of Rollins versus Kevin Owens?
I quite liked it. Once again, I quite liked the story, the build up for this one. Like I said, I hadn't been watching any of it before, and they showed it, and I got quite into it. I found myself cheering on Seth Rollins, and when he hit him over the bell and walked away, I was like, yes, Rollins, that's exactly what you should be doing.
That's a good move.
That's a good move. Get out of there, because your heel babyface is clearly set to win. But then when he gets called back, you sort of know what's going to happen. I think at that point it became. Was going to win it, but though the spot that they did come in, his WrestleMania moment, as they were saying at the time when he jumped off the WrestleMania sign, is one of these things that it's a shame that stuff like that happened with no fans there, because if that happened surrounded by a arena of 80,000 people, everyone would have been like the Shane McMahon off the Titan Royal or type of moment, or Mankind off the cage moment through the table. That was a bit of a shame for that aspect, but like I personally, I don't know they're gonna play with it afterwards. Like I feel like Seth Rollins, he loses his Messiah outing now, and I felt like maybe that was something that they could have kept playing with. I don't know, I just quite enjoyed that character, and so I'll be interested to see what they do with that afterwards. But it's an all right match. It was like I was more involved in the story than the match there, I would say.
Yeah, I kind of wish Seth just refused the call out, like to really heal it up and say, no, I'm not coming back, you're not having your moment. But
or once it turned into no DQ, he'd have his disciples come out and just get absolute shit out. I was thinking, why didn't no one come out? Like, he's got these disciples. Surely at that point, anyone could just join in. Yeah, no, unbelievable. But Owens goes over. I think they wanted to kind of give him that like, as we mentioned, the WrestleMania moment, but it's obviously subdued for the reasons that are out of everyone's control. We then move on to the Universal title match, which wasn't the main event. The main event was the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and The Undertaker, which we'll be doing at the end of the quote-unquote traditional wrestling part. But Goldberg versus Braun Strowman again for the Universal title. It runs for 3 minutes. Goldberg spears Strowman 3 or 4 times. Strowman gets up and then reverses a jackhammer attempt from Goldberg. Slams him several times and then pins him basically to capture one of the most prestigious belts that they're trying to push in the company. It is on the same level as the WWE Championship. What do you make of this? Because this is a far cry from what we had seen at AEW Revolution, just in terms of the belt being decided in 3 minutes in comparison to like the 20 odd minutes that Jericho and Moxley went for. Yeah, it felt like a squash match a little bit, but with the belt on. So it wasn't great, to be honest. It really wasn't great, and I don't know. I don't know if you've heard about afterwards. Apparently, that Goldberg wasn't contracted to anything else afterwards, and so McMahon was like, "Well, you're not contracted." And I think Goldberg wanted to drop the belt to it wasn't meant to be
Roman.
Paul.
Roman Reigns.
And apparently there was a bit. It was a bit arsey about that as well, and he wanted to drop it to Roman Reigns, so he wanted to retain the title and then give it to Roman Reigns when they're down at SummerSlam or something like that, but he wasn't obviously going to be doing any of the shows and stuff like that. So I guess from that point McMahon sort of has to sort of go get him, and apparently he's like on like $1 million a TV appearance or a match, should I say. So like it probably, from a financial perspective and with the whole COVID-19 stuff, makes pure sense. The match just felt a bit squashy. However, I don't know them well enough, but as soon as Goldberg starts going in and getting smashing his finisher in like three, four times.
Yeah.
You think, crikey, what's going to go on here, and then they reverse it. I get the idea, and it's a novel idea if it was the only time they did it on the card.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll come on to that later. But look, now because of all of that, it just feels very sort of like meh. Like, and the belt just felt it definitely. It just felt the belt lost a little bit of its integrity, I guess.
I don't think it's got much integrity to lose after Goldberg won it, in all honesty. But I get your point. But yes, this didn't help it certainly. So, is your favourite match from the first night the ladder match? Then is that what you're going for?
Yeah.
For night one, I think. I might. I think I'm going to follow you just because I think Rollins should have just DQ'd and walked off. But everyone would have gone mental. To be fair, it's WrestleMania. It's like, well, something's got to happen. But that was a 3-hour event, and then obviously we said we'll talk about the separate cinematic matches right at the end. So we'll now move on to night 2. We kicked things off with the NXT Women's Title match between Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. This was a much longer title match, in fact, compared to both the gentleman's top belt and the Raw Women's Tag title, which had taken place on night 1. Charlotte wins. She captures the NXT Women's title. Works on Rhea Ripley's leg throughout the entire match, which I think was some good storytelling there, and then eventually puts her in the figure 4, extends it to the figure 8, and to my surprise, Rhea Ripley taps out. Like, the babyface taps out clean. What did you think of this match?
I really enjoyed it. After watching that first night, in terms of single matches, it was probably at this point, and I'm trying to think what happened after it. It's probably the one of the, if not the best singles match of probably the whole card. It just, they both worked it really well. I felt the finish was a little bit weak. Like the going into the figure 8 was great, but yeah, it did tap too easy, and actually it didn't even look like a tap, which to me it looked like because she was slapping.
I thought she was trying to slap her leg off.
Yeah, exactly. Because she'd been slapping her quite a lot throughout, like because she'd been caught up in a few things, and it just looked like she was slapping, and so I was thinking that doesn't look like a tap to me. And you can hear everything then as well, so you did hear her saying, "I'll give up." I don't know. My sound's going. Is yours going on?
No, I'm good. I'm still here. It's all good.
Oh, it's just my end. I carry on talking in. So, but yeah, it was just an all round great fight. Like, and it's just like as you said, the storytelling was really well the whole way through it. Consistently working on the leg. Both of them had multiple spots where they both look like, oh, they're going to get it. And like, I feel like the right outcome happens, and Charlotte Flair gets the title, because I feel like there must be so many storylines they can do off the back of that as well, rather than Charlotte not getting it. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that, and I wasn't expecting to watch that fight and think, oh, that's going to be the one of the fights to card, but it was for me. Yeah,
no, I think, to be honest, this was over the 2 nights my favourite out of the lot. I don't know if that's because the standard wasn't as high as what I would like, but I enjoyed the match throughout. I enjoyed the finish, and yeah, I mean, look, Rhea Ripley's kind of burst on the scene in the last 6 to 8 months in like the WWE universe in NXT, and when you come up against someone like Charlotte Flair, who's been doing it 10-15 years, like a veteran, she probably should lose the first match to them, but like you said, that now sets up a really interesting chase if they choose to do it, where at the moment Ripley's not quite good enough, but that's only for now. Like, Ripley can improve over the next few months and come back and win it, and take Charlotte's spot and probably get a bit more of a shine out of it rather than knocking her off at the first attempt. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great match. We then got Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley, 7 minutes. Basically, Bobby Lashley's valet, Lana, decided to suggest a different move to Lashley when he was about to do the Dominator, and that delay cost him. Black connected with his Black Mass kick for the win. 7 minutes. What did you make of this?
Just a bit shit, wasn't it? Like,
nothing really much to do.
Nothing really much to talk about.
No real story to build it up. It wasn't really.
No,
you was talking about matches that could be cut.
Yeah, exactly.
prime
This
candidate.
felt like it was just thrown in because, why not? And like, I'm still surprised Bobby Lashley's still kicking around in WWE. Like, he's been there multiple times. I remember watching, I think, TNA when he was there.
Yeah. And wasn't he doing like Bellator as well at the same time?
Yeah, exactly.
Had Rampage and Tito Ortiz come over as well into TNA, and when they was in Bellator, oh god.
Yeah, it was alright. To me, it was just a bit. It was a bit of it was just a squash match, and like you know what? 7 minutes probably was too long for it. It needed to be less than 5. And they could have just told that whole storyline of whatever his missus' name was, tell him to do a different move, because I quite like that little part of the story. Like, straight away that happens, what's going to happen, because we've seen it 100 times in wrestling, and most wrestling storylines are rehashed anyway. So but like, it just went on a little. 7 minutes. It went on too long, and it was just a bit of a nothing. Yeah,
I think for Bobby Lashley's perspective, they didn't want to like squash him in like too short a time, because they still find him a useful member, and he's still got quite a decent bit of credibility. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't with no story. It wasn't really worth having on. And I think for WrestleMania, when you're trying to look at things to cut, it's stuff like that needs to go, really. Dolph Ziggler versus Otis. Now, you would have seen the backstory to this one, where Otis is, in love, and he's been stitched up basically by Ziggler and what's that woman's name? Is it Mandy? I can't remember. Yeah, Mandy.
Yeah.
Mandy's best friend in Ziggler. First of all, what did you make of the backstory you got to see, and then the match and the outcome itself? I mean, the outcome, I guess people will be pleased with, but I don't know if there's a lot else there.
So this story is for me. Like, when watching it, I went back to watching the Attitude Era, and it was just like shit's, obvious things that's never going to happen in the real world, just happening. And
who leaves their phone unlocked, first of all, in this day and age? Other than my dad. He's the only one, I know. It's because he's old.
Well, yeah, but like I really like the backstory. I thought it was I got right behind it. I was all Team Otis straight away, and I was like,
you didn't go for the heel?
No, for this one, I just I was well Otis, and I really enjoyed it, and like the match itself was good as well. Like, to be honest, and like the outcome of it all, it was definitely something that you probably think they wouldn't have put on WrestleMania if it wasn't over 2 nights, and it was definitely more one of the other pay-per-views, like a Money in the Bank match, or even that, or just a spot on Raw. But like it just enjoyed it. It felt like, to me, it felt like a throwback to that, so not in terms of the Attitude Era of like being blood and stuff like that, but like more like the Al Snow side of the Attitude Era, where you think, well, how the fuck's that crazy shit going on, but it still works in the WWE universe. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. I'd probably say it was one of my favourite moments of day 2 of WrestleMania.
Excellent. Well, we then move into what I thought had the best backstory, and I was really looking forward to. It was Edge versus Randy Orton, last man standing match. Like, I've been going out of my way to watch all the segments for this feud, like just even it meant skipping through most of Raw just to see when Edge or Randy Orton were on. And then we were treated to a 36-minute walk and brawl match that lasted about 4 minutes in the ring, if that, and then was just all around the backstage area. As I said, it clocked in at 36 minutes. I really enjoyed the ending, the climax to the end, and the way that Edge finally put Randy Orton down with the concerto to the floor and just to finish him off. But it was 36 minutes, and there's been a lot of complaints from people saying it was way, way too long. What's your thoughts? Too long? Okay? Like it? Or a real disaster?
No, I liked it. It was definitely too long because I zoned in and out at multiple stages during it. They probably didn't need to visit every room in the development centre of WWE.
No, I don't care what's going on back there. I'm sure it's very nice, but we don't need to be seeing the gym.
Exactly.
Or the conference room. That was the second one. I was like, Jesus, I don't care when they're having their meetings.
Yeah, because he climbed on top of the that I don't know, cage thing hanging in the conference room.
Like it, mesh.
It didn't need to go to that room. It didn't need to go to the. There was one point there was just they were like, he threw a sandbag at him. There was just a cameraman standing on a tripod, and I thought, why is he standing there? Like he's not even filming this. He's just stood there. And I was like, but it did feel like one of the old sort of like WWE games that I played where you go around to backstage and it's all kicking off in the backstage and stuff like that. Once again, another sort of, it felt like a bit more of a throwback to sort of like the Attitude Era. It just didn't need to go on as long. The finish was brilliant. Though saying that, I actually maybe it's because it's so brilliant because when they went that high up, you expect them to go off the top somewhere or go in sync, and they didn't. And so they've thrown you off the scent and stuff like that. It was an all round great match. It was probably cut it down by 10 minutes, not visit a couple of the rooms backstage, but this is why Edge and Randy Orton are two of the biggest stars, and they're probably on two of the biggest earners in the WWE. But it's because they can put on stuff like that. I would have been interested to know if any of that was edited. It didn't feel like it was, but it definitely could have been. Like when they go between different rooms, you think, is that now going to be? Is that a new cut? And I'm pretty sure it is. It wasn't because of the way it was done, and I'd like to think Edge and Randy Orton would have been like, no, we're going to just purely go for this and stuff like that. Because I like the way the cameraman was running to catch up and stuff like that. Like it's just all around well done. And like that for me, like you haven't got an audience there, so what do? Straight away backstage, and even when you have an audience there, like you're not seeing them anyway. So like you don't feel like you're missing a big crowd moment for WrestleMania and stuff like that. And so I thought it's really good. Probably the match of day two, I'd say. Like I'd say that in terms of just pure entertainment and wrestling and a bit of everything, I'd say it pips the Charlotte match. Charlotte's was definitely better for pure wrestling ability and so forth, but like this was just like all round entertainment, and not knowing what's going to happen next was just up there. It was great.
Yeah, I think the execution and the finish and the last 10 minutes were really good. Could it have been cut down? Absolutely. Would I sit there and choose to watch this match back again in the future? Probably not. But we're still going to have though that great moment of Edge drilling the chair into Orton's skull and putting him down for the 10 count finally. So I think, as a lot of people said it was way too long and it's been a bad call, whatnot. I actually thought it was okay. I mean, yes, there probably was times when I was zoning in and out, but I was kind of engrossed in it because I've been following the story quite closely, so I think that helped sort of pull it through. Tag team match: Street Profits versus Austin Theory, Angel Garza for the Raw tag team titles. The Street Profits retain in 6 minutes. For me, not really much to talk about here. It was just a standard quick tag match to give the Street Profits a little defence. Yeah,
bit shit. Probably wouldn't have been on the card if it wasn't 2 nights worth. Then I even found out on Raw they had a rematch apparently on the Monday, which was pointless. Why and the same result happened. So to me it was it was a bit shit.
Bayley, Sasha Banks, Tamina, Naomi, Lacey Evans in a 5-way elimination match, which they just don't do these days. It's normally first pinfall. We're not going to go through the entire elimination type. All we need to know is that Bayley won in 19 minutes. There was a little story between Bayley and Sasha Banks, who are good buddies, and there'd been a little bit of a miscommunication where Bayley hit Sasha Banks. There's a chance that maybe Bayley could have saved Sasha from being eliminated by Lacey Evans, but eventually Sasha Banks comes back in and helps Bayley beat Lacey Evans. What did you think of this women's title match?
Wrestling ability, great again, well not great, is good. It's like really enjoyable.
Not better than AEW's women's.
Massively better than AEW's.
Can you imagine this? A 19-minute elimination match in AEW's women's division?
I'd fast forward at the moment. It's just it just puts it to shame. Anyway, let's get back to WrestleMania. It's 19 minutes. To be honest, was too long personally. Like I did drift off at the start. I liked what they did. They everyone got their sort of moment and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was in my head, I would assumed it would have been Bayley versus Sasha for the final two, and then there would have been something going on there, like, you know, does she tell Sasha to lay down to get the pin and stuff like that? And I thought, are they going to go like that? And they played that completely different to what I was expecting. So, you know, kudos for that. You know, I like it when I don't predict what's going to happen. But it just felt like it was overdone. I think, once again, it was a match that probably wouldn't have happened if they weren't over the 2 nights. And the reason I think that was it all came together after they'd already started filming without an audience. And so at that point, you know, they were already looking over the 2 nights. And so it felt like it sort of built up pretty quickly. And I think they're probably, there's something going to be happening between Sasha and Bayley later on, I'm sure. And that's going to be the where they look to. But, like, you know, it was an all right match. It's just, you know, it's a bit long. It didn't feel WrestleMania quality, but, you know, it was the women themselves were put on a good show, I thought.
Yeah, it didn't need 5 people. I think it would have been good to have 4, and then you've got Lacey Evans, Sasha, Bayley, and then maybe Naomi or something. But having 5, it just seemed unnecessary, because the story was basically Bayley and Sasha, whether they were going to implode, and then Lacey Evans seemed like the main challenger. It wouldn't have made sense to have a triple threat match, because they both would have just ganged up on her. But having a 4th person, they could have, you know, played with that dynamic. But it was 5, and then that was the end of that. We're going to skip over the Firefly Funhouse until the end, and we land at the crescendo of WrestleMania 36. It's Goldberg versus Braun Strowman number 2, but instead we've got Brock Lesnar playing Goldberg and Drew McIntyre playing Braun Strowman. Paper, take us away for when McIntyre captures the WWE Championship in 4 minutes to become the first ever male British WWE champion. What a moment it could have been. I've been waiting for this since forever. You know, this is what it ends up being.
Yeah, and this is there's a few things that annoy me about this match, but, like, don't get me wrong, kudos to Drew. You know, it's great to have the first British champion ever, and so forth, and all that jazz, and I'm glad for him. There was 2 things that I guess look at this and annoyed me a bit. Like, one, if they already pre-recorded, tell Goldberg and Braun to do something different, because, you know, if this is the way you're going to go for the main world championship, which is probably a higher prestige belt, then just let them do it, because then if you're only going to do it once, you know, I can be like, wow, I get behind that. I wasn't seeing that coming like that, and so I could probably get behind it. The fact that it happened on the end of night 1, I was a bit like, it's just the same thing. Don't do the same thing again. You're taking away from what it could be. 2, like, I was listening to Drew's talking about before. He talked about it should be like a pub brawl and stuff like that. It didn't feel like a pub brawl to me. No. But however, if that had happened and there wasn't the Goldberg match in an arena full of, you know, 100,000 people, whatever, seeing Brock Lesnar's Drew get out of Brock Lesnar's F5 4 times, I think would have just sent the arena absolutely crazy. And it was one of those things that I felt was let down by not having an audience there, because, you know, if that had happened at that moment in time, like, the whole crowd would have been going absolutely wild, going, what's going on? And then when Drew started doing his kicks and doing it, and then winning it, you know, such a quick turnaround, that would have been a real shock moment. But it wouldn't have been a shock where the audience was silent. I think everyone would have been screaming their heads off, like, and that would have been brilliant. So I did feel a bit like it did take Drew's WrestleMania moment away from him by not being in the arena and having that type of match. It is what it is. So but I feel it's a bit unfair to criticise so much, because it would have worked in the right arena, a right context. Unfortunately, I think WWE screwed him over with having the Goldberg there, and obviously COVID-19 screwed him over a little bit. But they could have changed things up, knowing that, and maybe gone for something a little bit different, and maybe seen how we go. I personally thought they would have kept Brock with the title. I would be interested to know whether that was always going to be the way, that it was always going to win it, or whether they changed their mind. And the reason I'm thinking, did they change their mind, was Brock is obviously not the most charismatic person, and you probably want, and nor is Drew, to be fair, but you probably want someone with a bit more charismaticness carrying the belt while there's no audience there. Because you've got to be doing a lot more talking, a lot more segments, and that's why Brock always had Paul Heyman, I would imagine, because Paul Heyman was that charismatic man. So yeah, I don't know. I'd have been interested to know, but I guess it is what it is.
I'm wondering whether because we know Brock is a bit of a part timer. He's even when he's in UFC, like when he did that, it was very well paid, would only fight a few times a year and had his own all this stuff. I just wonder whether he wasn't up for doing any more once the outbreak had happened and thought, you know what, I'm going to do WrestleMania and then just go into hiding for a little while. I don't want to hang around here and keep doing segments or television or pre-taping stuff. And obviously with McIntyre, it's his first run as the top champion. He's not going to say, oh, I'm not going to do it either. He's going to grab the moment, and maybe it's just for this period whilst there's a bit of uncertainty over who can do what, that McIntyre was the better choice. And to be fair, McIntyre has been very popular and been on a bit of a run since the Royal Rumble, where they started sort of setting this match up. So it's not like he's an unjust champion, but I agree that the atmosphere took it away from him, and then just having the Goldberg and Braun Strowman match the night before obviously just made it ridiculous that both title matches were pretty much carbon copies. This was the better of the two. It had a bit more to it, and Lesnar put over McIntyre strong. And Heyman, I thought, done some really nice subtle work at ringside with putting Drew over after he'd hit a third F5 on him. Lesnar looks at him, and then Heyman says, "He's really good. Do it again. Keep doing it." Acknowledging that Drew McIntyre is not to be taken lightly, and he wasn't, because he ended up walking out of the belt. But it only lasted 4 minutes, which meant that the total time for the top belts being defended was 7 minutes. Do these belts mean anything in this universe?
Yeah, as I said, I feel like they could have got away with it for one belt, and I feel like the only one they could have got away with it was actually the Drew Brock fight, because actually that sort of made sense to me, because both of them, their finishes are meant to be these amazing things, and so that would have been a spectacle. It's just they should have done something with the Goldberg belt. I forget what it's called, the Universal title. That's it. So it's just a bit annoying. I think the main championship still definitely does mean something. I'd hope so anyway. But yeah, it definitely feels like pretty much every other belt on that after that main title is just a bit of a joke on the WWE at the moment.
Yeah, I think the last 4 title matches, that includes Universal and WWE Championship matches, not one of them has gone over 5 minutes.
Cool. Maybe that was in Brock's contract.
Maybe he just can't work as long or whatever. I mean, it might be another reason why someone like McIntyre, who probably can work much longer or wants to work longer, will be a better choice. Same with Strowman as well. The trouble is now we've had McIntyre kick out of about 6 F5, so who realistically can ever beat him? I don't think there's anyone they've built up close enough. Best match, what are you going to go for? Is it going to still be the last man standing match? I'm going to stick with Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, I think, despite our discussion.
No, last man standing for me was I enjoyed it. I felt like I was back in playing an old WWE game where I was, it'd all gone backstage, and so I quite enjoyed that for me. In terms of all-round entertainment, best wrestling match was definitely Flair, but just the best in terms of entertainment.
Sing the jeans. Woo! Then we move on to the 2 matches segment. Is
it worth mentioning the post Drew Big Show?
Oh yeah, go on. So I forgot you'd watch Raw, so I don't know if you want to take away what you.
Well, I didn't watch Raw. I just watched a bit of a catch up. Fuck that. I'm now not going back to the WWE until I'm required to report back on one of these podcasts again. But from what I was saying was, from my understanding was they basically showed that Drew was having 20 minutes after having a bit of, a chat afterwards, and then the Big Show turns up at WrestleMania. So technically the headline match was Big Show versus Drew McIntyre.
It wasn't the same night, yeah.
So, Brock didn't host that show. But as you said, I I think Drew won, or Drew definitely won, but I don't know how he won. But once again, you got Drew then was going to just done Brock Lesnar. He's just done the Big Show. You do look around and think who really is going to challenge him other than maybe Brock coming back stronger. Like, I don't see anyone really in the company that's going to take it away from him too soon.
No, I agree. I'll be interested to know whether the Big Show Drew match went longer than the Brock Drew match. I think it might have done. Don't know. Someone can correct us. So I'm going to call this the cinematic wrestling segment because we had a boneyard match between Undertaker and AJ Styles, and then we had a Firefly Funhouse match between John Cena and The Fiend. Now, before we get into the ins and outs of those, my question to you is, this might sound like a weird question, and I want to use my words carefully. Is this the final evolution of sports entertainment, not pro wrestling, sports entertainment, whereby the matches are crafted together in a cinematic style akin to sort of an action sequence or action film? Is this the final stop for what sports entertainment can be in this life? Because I've not really seen anything quite like this.
In answer to your question, without probably going into too much detail around the matches, I don't think it's the final stop. I definitely feel like this is a stop that, I think now that's happened, it won't go away. And we will see more things like this appearing in the future, whether that be at a pay-per-view event or on Raw or on SmackDown or something like that. I think it's they can do a lot more in terms of sets and all that type of stuff. I remember the days of effectively it was a casket match.
It didn't tell us what the rules were. We never knew how this match would be won, the boneyard match.
Yeah,
but that is essentially it, a buried alive match or a casket match.
Yeah, and but they can definitely do more with it, and I guess we'll go into my opinions on the individual matches afterwards. But I definitely feel that now the WWE's unlocked that, I feel like looking around the internet, people seem to enjoy it. Actually, a lot of people seem to be, jizzing their pants over a lot of that, especially the Taker match. But so I don't think it's going to go away. I think now we'll see more of that, especially in the WWE. Maybe not, the other wrestling brands, but definitely within the WWE. They've always been quite eager to be more of an entertainment than purely pro wrestling sort of thing.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Undertaker v AJ Styles in the Boneyard match. I don't know how long it went. I think it went about half hour, roughly. And it was a edited cinematic brawl that took place in an undisclosed boneyard. I don't quite know what a boneyard is, but that's what they said.
Graveyard.
It was basically a graveyard, wasn't it? It wasn't a boneyard. It had this weird shed, this massive shed thing next to it, which I thought, what's that doing in this graveyard? But whatever. Anyway, Undertaker and AJ Styles go out in this cinematic match. What did you think of this match? And Undertaker wins because he buries AJ eventually, and there may have even been a little hint at our new favourite thing in pro wrestling, which is teleportation.
I fucking hated it. I thought it was so shit. And there's been so many people going, it's the best WrestleMania moment ever, and I'm
Undertaker though.
I know
AJ Styles, two of our favourites. TNA, AJ.
I love both of them as pro wrestlers, but if I want to watch Die Hard, I'll watch Die Hard. I don't tune into the WWE or wrestling to watch a feature film, brawl. And for me, that don't get me wrong, they put on a good show and stuff like that, but it could have just been a casket match in a ring and more of that type of thing. There's so much editing in it. It just loses for me the whole wrestling aspect of it. And
agreed.
And little things like when all those people turned up, all the minions and stuff like that, and and then Taker hit them
the
all.
Dark Order.
Yeah, Taker hit them all, and then they just disappear. Where they don't turn back up or are in the background of any scene. So they've teleported away. I didn't like the way Taker teleported behind him like that.
He might have quickly got out and run behind him, but it was implied teleportation.
Yeah, I think it could have worked really well. If they'd done it, even if they'd had it in a real life and it'd fallen and there'd been like a trapdoor and Taker quickly went under and the camera cut away and then Taker was suddenly behind him again, and like that you can so easily do in the ring, and they've done tricks like this before, and they could have so easily done something like that. And I don't know, like the two brutes that was with AJ. To be fair, the one thing I did like, I liked AJ's entrance. It was to me like there's proper old Undertaker's 1992 music. And I was like, and then he came up as the American Badass, and I was thinking, now that wasn't the best year's Taker. I really didn't like it. it was just too cinematic for me, trying to be like a match, and I didn't really have a lot of time for it. I wouldn't choose to watch something like that again.
No, I agree. I don't think I'll do my point at the end, because it kind of my overall point kind of factors into the overall style of these matches. But I don't think I hated it. But
it wasn't pay-per-view. It wasn't. It was a segment in Raw or something like that.
Mate. Yeah, it's just not. Yeah, once we get through Firefly Funhouse, I'll go through it. But I'm assuming that this didn't fare much better. The Fiend versus John Cena and the Firefly Funhouse. They were quite different in the fact that the Undertaker AJ Styles Boneyard match was shot as a. They're trying to pass off as a legitimate match, just in this boneyard with all the bells and whistles that a movie would have. But this was just a headfuck, this Firefly Funhouse, going all the way through John Cena's career, sort of making reference to that he's this generation's Hulk Hogan, with some Saturday Night Main Event segments and the NWO being mentioned. There wasn't even an attempt to make this a logical match or finish. I don't know who won. I'm assuming the Fiend won, but it was so unclear that I don't actually know. What did you think of this one?
Once again, I wouldn't choose to watch it. I enjoyed this one more than the Taker one.
Right.
For me, personally, it didn't feel like trying to be a wrestling match, which was the bit I liked about it.
Yeah.
And so, to me, they were doing something really different, it wasn't a WrestleMania moment either. But I liked the whole way that there was the throwbacks to the old John Cena's, and it went to the NWO and all that stuff. And I really enjoyed it. I thought, this is something I could watch, or I could as a moment on Raw and stuff like that, and it's some sort of craziness. But it shouldn't be classed as a match. They didn't no. The Fiend won the match and will get the W. But it's to me that would have been brilliant as a headfuck, as a build up to a match between the Fiend and John Cena. It was one of these moments that happened before, and it'd be like, oh my god, look, he's this crazy man. He's got these crazy things going on, and then they actually have the wrestling match at WrestleMania. That for me would have been brilliant. These, in my opinion, these things don't work as wrestling matches or pay-per-view moments. That to me, they would work in terms of the entertainment side of wrestling, but as more segmenty type things to supplement the wrestling. That because to me, is AJ Styles dead? I don't know.
Well, his arm was out.
Can he come back now? It looked like a potato with his glove on. Sorry, I know I've jumped back on.
Yeah, no, he didn't. I don't think that was a real arm. It looked fake. The bitten off arm in Jaws looks better than that, and that was 40 years ago. But yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying there. I mean, when you said it's not a pay per view, I kind of got my cogs spinning a bit more, and I thought, you're kind of right there, because what people pay for on pay-per-view, and obviously there's no live audience, so they're not involved in this, but if they just chucked this on during a pay-per-view where there was an audience and they watched it on the screen, you don't pay pay-per-view money to watch a cinema basically, do you? You don't pay pay-per-view to watch a movie, especially at $35 a pop. And the art of performance is why I think people watch professional wrestling primarily, is to see the in-ring performers perform live or as close to live as possible and pull it off, and you respect all the wrestlers that can do it and not make mistakes, things like that. When you have things like this, all the mistakes are cut out, all the risks are completely eliminated. And yeah, I think you're right to say that it's probably not a pay-per-view segment, and that it's not. I don't want to say it's not pro wrestling. It's just it's the sports entertainment brand up as far as it can. We've seen it before. Basically, this is like the new line that has been created in what you can get away with on a wrestling show. Now, I really don't like the fact that it was mixed in with a show that was a traditional in-ring event, and I don't like the fact that the build-up to both of the matches were traditional in-ring promos and back and forths and brawls and whatnot, because they just don't make sense. It doesn't make sense to put this perception on that there's a real bit of rivalry between the four people involved in these matches, and that the payoff is one that's impossible to happen. Like, it's like we're inside John Cena's mind. Like, it's really weird. And the other one is just a movie that's been cut and coddled together. You're completely pulling down any resemblance of it being a sporting event at that point. Now, if they decide that actually this isn't a bad idea to do this based on the reception it's getting, which seems to be positive, then I've got no problem with them doing it, but it should branch off and be its own separate thing. Like, maybe not a separate brand, but if you do like a short run series of perhaps someone like The Undertaker, who's not going to be wrestling, week to week, he can't, he's getting old and stuff, but you could do like a 4-episode run rivalry that you frame and put in that box, and you say this is just a rivalry between Undertaker and, let's say, John Cena, for example. They're going to have a 4-week run. There's going to be vignettes that are all in this similar style, and the payoff's going to be in this cinematic style. I'm fine with that, because it means it's not going to interrupt the normal wrestling that I'm trying to watch, and I might even check it out now and again. But it just completely breaks down any resemblance of it being a sporting event when this is put on and then paid off and seen as a legitimate match, which is what the commentators were doing afterwards.
Yeah, it's just I think it probably has its place, just not on, personally, I guess, for me and probably for you, just not on pay-per-views or actually on the wrestling events. As I said, like that,
have its own little universe.
Yeah, well, as I said, like the Funhouse bit, I think would have been a great segment, maybe if it wasn't as long on Raw. If it was like a this crazy thing going on for like 5-6 minutes, you could probably get away with that on a Raw event and stuff like that.
But then people would say, how's that happening? How are we seeing in John Cena's brain?
Well, yeah, but
why is he agreeing to this brain examination?
How's Otis getting Mandy? So, it's WWE Universe. Anything can really happen.
Poor old bastard.
Poor old bastard. But it is interesting, and it does feel a bit like an evolution, though we both might not agree with it and like it. I feel like it's not going to go anywhere, unfortunately, and I think WWE is quite happy to move away from the word sport, though it likes to use the word athlete a lot, I noticed. But
don't say wrestler.
No, athlete.
Not allowed. You're not allowed to say wrestler. You can't say pro wrestling. It has to be sports, entertainment, or athlete, yes, because it's not pro wrestling, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so I think, the thing is, I think they got away with it on this because there was 2 shows and there was a lot of, therefore, in-ring stuff. I would be interested to see whether they'd have the bollocks to do it on a just a single one night show. That would be an interesting thing, and slot it in, or would they do it, before the event's technically started, or would they do it after the event technically finished for the live audience? Because I wouldn't imagine a live audience would enjoy it too much. You know, you can get away with going to the backstage because it feels like it's happening, and you could get away with it if it was just hosting the graveyard and, you know, there was a real referee there and stuff like that, and they were just, you know, battling in front of each other into graves and stuff like that, because you get away with that.
They had fucking drone camera shots, the soundtrack, bloody
the
sound
soundtrack
effects.
Yeah, that was it as well. That pissed me off. Sorry. You don't get that, you know. I don't know, it wasn't my cup of tea, but hey ho.
Yeah. My worry is that now that it's got a good reception, is that it's then picked up in other areas. To be honest, if WWE do it, fine. I'm not going to be overly bothered because very much a casual watcher of it and just try and keep up with the interesting stuff. My worry is that you see Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, Cody and Tony Khan sitting there going, "Oh, that's a really good idea." And I don't want them to do that. It's kind of like being the Elite turned up to 10. Isn't it? Like where they do segments on that show that, you know, wouldn't fly really in a proper like Dynamite show.
Wow.
But they've obviously, WWE have got the production values and they've had the time to construct something properly. And I don't know. Yeah, don't mix it up. If you're going to do it separately. But I fear that this might be a regular or a semi-regular segment. Obviously, they've had their hands tied because of the circumstances, but it doesn't mean you had to do this. And I don't think it is something I want to see too much of going forward.
No.
Any other thoughts?
No. I think I've laid out my cards there. Overall, like I guess if we're going to talk about the overall event, I overall I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, which was a surprise. I definitely feel like I went into it wanting to dislike it and coming away from it thinking, actually, the wrestlers here are generally really good, especially the women's division, and some of the old school guys and some of the new ones. And I generally quite enjoyed it. And I thought, could I see myself getting WWE if I really wanted to? Probably. I could sit down and watch it. I don't think I will. But like, if I was to score it out of 10, the WrestleMania, I'll give it a 7. Like maybe 6.5. There was a lot of matches there to enjoy. I thought, even though there was some poor ones, but I didn't enjoy the cinematic stuff. There were the ladder match, the no DQ match, the last man standing match, the Charlotte Flair match. All for me were really good matches that would fly quite happily on any other brand that's just pure a wrestling band.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 6, I think. I think it saved itself by being over 2 nights, because if it had been 1 5-hour slog and they'd made cuts, I think it would have felt longer and I'd have been less forgiving. But the reason why I give it, and sometimes I think I just gave up 6.5 hours of my life for that. And I'm not even sure if a 6 feels right at this stage, because what did I get from that? Got maybe 2, maybe 3 good matches. I've got nothing great as far as I'm concerned. Nothing that blew me away. Again, hard to do with no crowd and whatnot. I don't know. I'm gonna give it a 6 because of the circumstances. So you going 6.5 or 7?
6.5.
6.5. Fair enough. We did a few Twitter polls. I'm just going to run through the results of those. Asked, what did you think of night 1 or part 1 of WrestleMania 36? Thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, or thumbs down. 55% said thumbs up. And then 11% said thumbs in the middle. 33% thumbs down. There are some percentages there, so I've rounded up. Part 2, it was an even split between thumbs up and thumbs in the middle. 40% each, and then thumbs down was 20%. And then, did you like the Boneyard and Firefly Funhouse matches? The options were, yes, I liked both. Only the Boneyard. Only the Firefly Funhouse. No, I didn't like either. 50% said, yes, I like both. With 25% going, only the Boneyard. Only the Firefly Funhouse got 12.5%. And then didn't like it, got 12.5% also. So,
wow, shows you how much we're in line with the audience, eh?
Fuck off. That's what makes it interesting sometimes.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, is there any... I mean, you said you weren't going to go and watch... unlikely to get into WWE again. Mm-hmm. If it was just 2 hours a week with a monthly pay-per-view, could you consider it? Is it something about the product you don't like, or is it just there's so much of it that it's kind of hard, frankly, keep up with? And I feel all pro wrestled out at the moment. I'm like, I've needed a rest from wrestling since I watched this.
Yeah, unfortunate for the WWE, there's just too much. And to be honest, I think it shows that I stopped watching once sort of SmackDown sort of became a thing anyway, or started to become a thing. I think I started originally watching it a bit, but then it just suddenly becomes too much, and you do need to sink a lot of time into it. Equally, the brand itself, I'm definitely more towards the AEW brand. I like a little bit of cheesiness, and I like a little bit of ruggedness and a bit more attitude-y. And so that sort of brand I feel sort of fills that spot, and so therefore I feel like I'd only have room for one, because I'd love to watch things like Ring of Honor and all that stuff, but I just personally, for me, I can happily commit to one promotion that I'm enjoying, and sort of get on line with the storylines there and stuff like that. But I just don't feel like I've got the capacity in my day-to-day life just to take on multiple ones of these and so forth. I think WWE, if would I watch another pay-per-view? Maybe, probably. Would I watch Money in the Bank, which is coming up? Probably, but maybe only because I've got the free pass. Once that free pass is gone, I probably won't watch.
WWE's gone.
Unless I somehow manage to find somewhere to watch it for free. I definitely wouldn't pay for it personally. So yeah, it's a shame. I think WWE we all grew up on and loved, and I think it's still got its place, and it's got a massive portion of the market, and I think it's fair. Yeah. And actually, I think the superstars or the wrestlers actually are some of the better wrestlers in the industry. I just think in terms of pure wrestling ability. So it is interesting. It's just a little. It's too much, as you said. There's just too much going on. There's three parts of that promotion with Next, SmackDown, Raw, and I think it's one of those ones. I guess when when you listen to music and then you start carry on going back to listening to your old songs that you don't listen to anything new anymore. It's a bit like that with me and WWE or / WWF. I feel like the stuff coming forward now I'm not really getting into, but I'd happily go back and watch things from the Attitude Era or from the early 90s and enjoy that again.
Yeah, that's it. It would be interesting if you just picked a random event from the last 6 months. And I'm not saying go on and review it, but see a bit of it to see what it's like with a proper crowd and whatnot. If that changes it, but it's probably the worst time to try and watch something new or something you haven't watched in ages. But it is where we are, so you can either put the brakes on everything or at least delve into things a little bit. I do have some other things up my sleeve for you to watch. Not WWE related, but some other little small commitment things that I'm going to throw your way. Whether you'll agree to them or not, I don't know. But for those that like old school wrestling, there might be some NWA Power coming your way to have a little look at. But that's another conversation for another day, and I'll leave you with that tease. Our poll is up, by the way, for the next classic event you want us to cover. I put it up a bit later than I should have done, but that's because I completely forgot it was WrestleMania weekend, to be fair. I thought, you know what, if Paper's going to watch it, this might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to talk about it, so we have to snatch it. So that got put back a little bit. But again, at DDT WrestleCast, you can vote for the next event that we will watch through and review. We've got WrestleMania 10, Royal Rumble 1992, In Your House 16, Canadian Stampede, and WrestleMania 8. So that poll will be open for a few more days at least. So make sure you head over to our lovely Twitter channel, follow that, drop us a vote on which one you want us to do, and we will pick that up and do it in due course. And as always, if you're listening to this on any of our podcast feeds, just subscribe. It's going to be much easier for you. That's it, Paper. I'll let you go. It's enough pro wrestling talk for you for another week or so until you get dragged into something else. But as usual, thanks for joining us on this particular episode, and we'll get you back on in due course.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Everyone else, thanks for your time, and ta-da.
This was a DIMP Digital production.